He's inside the house. I can hear him breathing. Her voice trembled through the phone, a desperate whisper swallowed by the storm outside. Then the line went dead. And 27-year-old Emily Hart was never seen again. Red and blue lights painted the snow-covered street as officers pushed through the front door of the little blue house at the end of Briarwood Lane. Inside, the air was still warm, scented with vanilla and lavender. It was a home still lived in, but its owner had vanished. Emily's phone lay on the kitchen floor, its screen cracked, an unplayed voice message waiting. A tiny smear of blood, no bigger than a coin, marked the pantry door. And on the dining table, a cup of hot chocolate sat untouched, a wisp of steam still rising from its surface. It was as if she had simply evaporated. The small, quiet town of Willow Creek was about to become the epicenter of one of the most baffling missing persons cases in modern history. A case so twisted with secrets, lies, and investigative missteps that even today, people argue about what really happened that night. And more importantly, why Emily Hart, a gentle, smiling schoolteacher, seemed to know someone was coming for her long before they arrived. To everyone who knew her, Emily Hart was the picture of sweetness. She taught third grade, baked cookies for her students, and lived a quiet life with her cat, Pumpkin. She wore soft sweaters and always remembered everyone's birthday. She was the girl next door, the one you could always count on. But beneath that sunny exterior there was a shadow. Something quietly haunted. Her friends and family noticed it in the long, silent pauses, the distant stares. They saw it in her obsessive routines, locking doors twice, checking windows 3 times, leaving lights on in empty rooms. Her mother called it anxiety. Her coworkers thought she was just careful, but the truth was, Emily was afraid. And she had every reason to be. The day she disappeared, December 14th, 2019, was cold and unremarkable. Emily finished her last class before winter break, handed out gingerbread cookies, and left the school around 3:15 p.m. Security footage from the parking lot captured her walking to her car. She smiled at something on her phone, placed a box of gifts in the back seat, and got in. But just before she closed the door, her smile vanished. She snapped her head to the right, as if someone had called her name. The camera showed no one there. She closed the door and drove away, out of the frame and out of public view forever. Just over 4 hours later, at 7:42 p.m., the 911 call came in. Her voice was a hushed, terrified whisper. "I think someone's in my house." The dispatcher tried to keep her calm. "Emily, can you get to a safe place?" "No," she breathed. "He's inside the house. I can hear him breathing." A floorboard creaked in the background. "Please hurry," she begged. Then, a loud crash, a scream and static. The call was over. Police arrived within 4 minutes. The house was empty. There was no forced entry, no obvious signs of a struggle. Her coat was on its hook, her keys in their dish. It was all too clean, too neat. But lead investigator Detective Marcus Arden noticed the details that screamed something was wrong. The living room window, one Emily always locked, was unlatched. A lamp in her bedroom was knocked over. Her cat Pumpkin was hiding under the sofa, trembling. And then there was her phone on the floor, cracked, a voice memo she was trying to record left unfinished. The entire scene felt interrupted, as if her ordinary evening was violently torn apart. The most chilling discovery, however, was a bloody fingerprint found on the inside of the pantry door. The blood was Emily's, but the print belonged to someone else. Someone had been in the house with her. The question was, who? And where had they taken her? The investigation immediately turned to Emily's life, peeling back the layers of her carefully constructed world. And what they found was a woman far more complex than anyone imagined. The quiet schoolteacher had secrets. Her journal, which she guarded so fiercely, was missing from her home. Investigators soon learned it wasn't the first time Emily had felt threatened. 6 months prior, she'd filed a police report about a potential stalker. She'd received anonymous, unsettling gifts at her doorstep: a single dead rose, a music box that played a discordant tune, a photograph of her house taken at night. The police had looked into it, but with no suspect and no direct threats, the complaint went nowhere. Now, it was clear those incidents were not random. They were a prelude. The first major suspect to emerge was Emily's ex-boyfriend, Jake Riley. Their relationship had ended messily a year before her disappearance. Friends described Jake as charming but intensely possessive. When Emily broke up with him, he hadn't taken it well. He'd called her dozens of times a day, showed up at her school, and even tried to get into her house one night, claiming he'd left something behind. Emily had changed her locks after that. When questioned, Jake had an alibi. He was at a bar with friends 2 towns over. His friends backed him up, and credit card receipts seemed to confirm his story. But Detective Arden was skeptical. Alibis can be fabricated. And Jake's overly calm demeanor during questioning felt rehearsed, almost unnatural for someone whose ex-girlfriend had just vanished. But then the case took another turn. As detectives analyzed Emily's phone records, they discovered a series of encrypted messages exchanged with an unknown number in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The tone was urgent, almost desperate. One of Emily's messages read, "He knows where I live. You have to stop him." The reply was chilling. "Stay quiet. Don't go to the police. I'll handle it." Who was this person Emily was confiding in? And who was the he was so terrified of? The anonymous number was traced to a burner phone, making it impossible to identify the owner. It seemed Emily had a secret protector, or perhaps a secret partner in a dangerous situation. This discovery led the investigation down a darker path. They began to look into Emily's family history. Her father, a successful but stern businessman, had a reputation for being controlling. Could Emily have been trying to escape some kind of family entanglement? He was cooperative with police, but seemed more concerned with the family's public image than his daughter's welfare. Her mother was a wreck, overwhelmed with grief, but even she admitted that Emily had grown distant in the past year, sharing less and less about her life. The perfect family facade began to show cracks. Meanwhile, the bloody fingerprint from the pantry door came back with a match that shocked everyone. It didn't belong to Jake Riley or anyone in Emily's family. It belonged to a man named Thomas Mercer, a drifter with a long criminal record for burglary and assault who had been paroled 3 months before Emily disappeared. He had no known connection to Emily or Willow Creek. He was a ghost. So how did his fingerprint end up in her house, in her blood? The theory was simple. A random home invasion gone wrong. Mercer broke in, Emily surprised him, and he took her. It was a clean, straightforward explanation. The only problem? Thomas Mercer had a rock-solid alibi. At the time of Emily's disappearance, he was in a holding cell for public intoxication, 100 miles away. He had been arrested that afternoon and wasn't released until the next morning. It was physically impossible for him to have been in her house. The case was now a mess of contradictions. A stalker, a possessive ex-boyfriend, a secret correspondent, a mysterious drifter whose print was at the scene but who couldn't have been there. It felt like every lead led to another dead end, another impossible puzzle. Detective Arden felt like he was being played, the evidence manipulated to send them chasing shadows. He re-examined the scene, the timeline, every single detail. The hot chocolate. Why make hot chocolate if you think an intruder is in your house? Unless the intruder wasn't a stranger? Unless she had let him in. The focus shifted back to the people Emily knew. What if the hot chocolate was for her guest? What if the 911 call wasn't about a stranger breaking in, but about a meeting that had gone horribly wrong? Arden and his team revisited everyone. They pressed Jake Riley on his alibi, discovering that one of his friends now admitted Jake had left the bar for nearly 2 hours that night. They dug deeper into Emily's father's business, uncovering shady dealings and enemies who might want leverage. They tried to crack the encryption on her messages, desperate to find the identity of her secret contact. Years have passed since that snowy night. The little blue house on Briarwood Lane has new owners. The case officially remains cold, filed away as a presumed abduction by an unknown assailant. But for those who followed the story, the questions linger. Was Emily the victim of a random, brutal attack? Or was she entangled in something much deeper, a web of secrets she could no longer control? Did her ex-boyfriend's obsession finally boil over? Did a family secret come back to haunt her? And what about Thomas Mercer? How did his fingerprint, a single, impossible clue, end up at the heart of the mystery? Some people believe Jake Riley is guilty, that he manipulated his alibi and silenced Emily for good. Others are convinced her own family was involved, and the entire investigation was a cover-up. And there's a quieter, more haunting theory that Emily, stalked and terrified, arranged to meet someone she thought could help her, only to realize too late that she had invited the real monster into her home. The truth of what happened to Emily Hart is still out there, buried under years of silence and speculation. Her disappearance serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the people we think we know are the ones we don't know at all. And the most dangerous secrets are the ones hidden in plain sight. The disappearance of Emily Hart erupted into headlines almost overnight. Beloved teacher missing after terrifying 911 call, mystery in Willow Creek, woman vanishes. Without a trace. Who was really in Emily Hart's house? The story captured the nation's attention, and the local police in the small town of Willow Creek were completely overwhelmed. They quickly formed a task force, bringing in the State Bureau for help. Detective Arden was assigned to lead the case. He worked tirelessly, interviewing anyone who had ever known Emily, reviewing hours of surveillance footage, and meticulously combing through her personal belongings. He was trying to build a psychological profile of a woman who, he was beginning to realize, had been spiraling into fear long before she ever went missing. Almost immediately, 3 suspects emerged. Each one had a motive, each one had an opportunity, and each one was hiding secrets of their own. First, there was Nathan Marks, Emily's quiet and brooding ex-boyfriend. They had dated for 2 years before a breakup that Emily had described to friends as necessary but painful. Nathan was intelligent, a freelance programmer who was deeply logical but also socially detached. He often spent long stretches of time alone, disappearing into his own world for days. His coworkers and family described him as stable but cold. In her own words, Emily had called him someone who cared, but didn't know how to show it. But then there was the incident. About a month before they broke up, Emily confided in her best friend. She said, "Every night I feel like someone's watching the house. I think Nathan thinks I'm seeing someone else." When questioned, Nathan denied ever following her. He denied setting foot on her street, Briarwood Lane, after the breakup. And he vehemently denied having any involvement in her disappearance. But his alibi for that night? He was in his apartment, alone. There were no witnesses, no phone records, no computer activity logs. Nothing. Detective Arden had heard that alibi far too many times to trust it. Nathan Marks quickly became the investigation's prime suspect. Next was James Dunn, the friendly, seemingly harmless neighbor next door. He was a 52-year-old widower with round glasses, a gentle smile, and a habit of waving at everyone who passed by. People in the neighborhood liked him. They trusted him. And that was exactly the problem. James had a key to Emily's house. He'd been given one just in case during a bad storm the previous year. He claimed he never used it, and Emily simply never asked for it back. When detectives searched his home, they found a series of disturbing items. First, a pair of muddy boots that matched the prints found just outside Emily's kitchen window. Then, a handwritten schedule that tracked Emily's work hours down to the minute. And finally, a camera in his backyard pointed directly at her living room windows. James had an explanation for everything. He insisted the boots belonged to a landscaper he'd hired. The schedule? He was just keeping track of neighborhood safety patterns. The camera was for watching wildlife, foxes specifically. He smiled politely through every single explanation. Too politely. Arden's instincts were screaming that something was deeply wrong. Then, investigators found Emily's journal, and it revealed something far more disturbing. She had written, "James stands outside too long when I'm unloading groceries. He asked me if I ever felt lonely living alone. Last night I swear I saw him near my backyard, watching the house." When confronted with the journal entry, James Dunn denied everything once again, but he flinched. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible reaction, but it was there, and that flinch stayed with Detective Arden for months. The third suspect was the most unsettling of all. He was a complete unknown, a shadow. 2 days before Emily disappeared, a neighbor's security camera captured a tall man in a dark coat walking slowly past her house at 1:14 in the morning. A week before that, another camera located half a mile away spotted what appeared to be the same man watching Emily through a bookstore window as she shopped. And the night before she vanished, Emily wrote this chilling entry in her journal. The man was back again. Tall, black coat, watching the house. I pretended not to notice, but he stood there for almost 5 minutes. This man was never identified. He was never seen up close. He was never found. He became the ghost lurking behind every theory, the phantom no one could name. As investigators dug deeper into Emily's past, they discovered something completely unexpected. Behind her bright smile and gentle, kind disposition, Emily had been carrying heavy, unspoken fears. Her journal entries painted the portrait of a woman who was either slowly slipping into a state of paranoia or was being hunted by something very real. She wrote, "The same car keeps driving by the school." In another entry, "Someone altered the lock on my back door." She mentioned her ex. "Nathan keeps messaging me. Says he just wants to talk, but it scares me." And her neighbor, James, accidentally showed up at the same coffee shop again. And then, the most haunting entry of all, "Someone is coming. I feel it." The detectives were at a crossroads. They had to figure out if Emily was spiraling into delusion, creating threats where there were none, or if someone was truly methodically stalking her. The answer to that question would change the entire direction of the investigation. And the truth, they would soon find out, was far darker than any of them could have imagined. Weeks into the investigation, the forensic results from the single blood smear found in Emily's pantry finally came back. The DNA belonged to Emily Hart, but the fingerprint found mixed in with the blood belonged to an unknown male. It didn't match Nathan Marks, it didn't match James Dunn, and when they ran it through every state and national database, it didn't match anyone on record. The unknown man, the shadowy figure in the black coat, was suddenly the primary suspect. But a single unidentified fingerprint wasn't enough. They needed more. And then fate, or perhaps just dumb luck, handed it to them. 4 miles from Emily's house, deep in the woods, a hunter stumbled upon something horrifying. It was a torn piece of fabric caught on a low-hanging branch, a piece of Emily's favorite scarf. And beside it, buried just beneath a thin layer of freshly fallen snow, was something metallic. He dug it out of the cold earth. It was a necklace, Emily's necklace. But that wasn't what made the detective's blood run cold. There was blood on it. And it wasn't hers. The DNA sample was a match to the blood found under the fingernails of another victim. From another cold case in another state, the unknown man had bled in the woods. Now they had a trail. They were no longer just searching for a missing person. They were hunting a killer. The timeline detectives pieced together is bone-chilling. At around 3:40 in the afternoon, Emily Hart arrives home. She puts on the kettle, getting ready to make some hot chocolate, a simple, comforting routine. But at some point, that routine is shattered. A man enters her house. She either sees him or hears something out of place, because the next thing she does is grab her phone and dial 911. She doesn't have time to speak. She hides in the pantry, her heart pounding against her ribs, but he finds her. She's forcibly removed from the house, dragged or carried to a waiting vehicle. They drive into the woods, the darkness swallowing them whole. Evidence suggests Emily fought back fiercely, even managing to injure her attacker. He escapes with her, pulling her deeper into the dense forest. But just as the trail gets hot, it runs cold. Literally, a massive snowstorm hits that night. A white blanket that erases all tracks, all scent trails, and all hope of following them any further. With no body and no suspect, the case stalled. For months, it was a ghost story, a local tragedy whispered in hushed tones. Investigators were at a dead end. But while reviewing endless hours of footage from traffic cameras miles away from the woods, a sharp-eyed tech specialist noticed something odd. A dark SUV, passing the same checkpoint 3 times in a single 24-hour period. The brand was unidentifiable, the license plate was caked in mud, and the driver was just a silhouette, a tall man in a heavy coat. This vehicle didn't belong to any local resident, wasn't registered to any workplace, and wasn't on any visitor logs. The lead detective, Arden, believed the unknown man lived outside of town. Maybe he was just passing through, or maybe he was targeting Emily for reasons no one could comprehend. And then, a chilling discovery reframed the entire case. While digging through old files, they found a police report Emily had filed 18 months earlier. It was marked non-urgent. It had been filed by a rookie officer who, tragically, never followed up. The report contained one single line that sent a shiver down Arden's spine. "I think someone is following me." This wasn't a random attack. This was planned. Detectives dug deeper into Emily's past, looking for anyone who might have held a grudge or an obsession. 3 years before she vanished, Emily had volunteered as a tutor at a rehabilitation center. There, one patient in particular, a young man named Caleb Rivers, had become attached to her. Too attached. He started writing her letters, leaving her unsolicited gifts. He even followed her home once. When Emily reported his behavior, the staff dismissed him as simply lonely but harmless. 2 months after Emily's complaint, Caleb Rivers disappeared from the program, and now he was a ghost. His records ended abruptly. His family hadn't heard from him in years. His last known address was an abandoned, squalid apartment. But one detail stood out. Caleb's physical description matched the height of the unknown man in the dark SUV. Arden felt it in his bones. This was the man Emily feared. This was the shadow she wrote about in that old police report. The presence she felt breathing in the darkness just outside her home. He hadn't just disappeared, he had been waiting. And now he had come back for her. For nearly a year after Emily vanished, the case remained frozen in time, just like the landscape on that terrible night. Then a hiker, exploring the remote northern woods, stumbled upon an unusual structure, half buried under years of brush and decay, a rusted, forgotten hunting cabin. What they found inside turned the case on its head. There was a torn piece of Emily's favorite sweater, a cracked glass pendant she wore every single day, a length of rope stained with her blood. And then there was the journal. Its pages were filled with disturbing, obsessive ramblings. And on the final page, scrawled in jagged, angry handwriting, were 3 words: "She's mine." Fingerprints lifted from inside the cabin were a match to the unknown man from the SUV, and at last that man had a name: Caleb Rivers. The lonely, harmless patient had been living completely off the grid, traveling through forests, drifting from one abandoned cabin to another. He had been watching Emily for months, meticulously planning his attack. He had taken her. He had held her in this very cabin. He had been preparing for something horrific. But the most important question still remained unanswered. Where was Emily? Despite the discovery of the cabin, despite finally identifying Caleb Rivers as her abductor, despite years of relentless searching, Emily Hart has never been found. Not her body, not her remains, not a single confirmed sighting of her after that night. Caleb Rivers vanished again, immediately after the abduction, leaving behind only the fragments of his madness in that desolate cabin. Theories have swirled for years. Some believe he fled with her deeper into the wilderness where they may have survived for days or even weeks. Others believe he harmed her that very night and hid her body where no one would ever think to look. A darker theory suggests he eventually died out there alone in the unforgiving wilderness, taking her final resting place to his grave. But there are those who were closest to Emily, who believe she fought harder than anyone ever knew, and that she almost escaped. Because near that hunting cabin, carved deep into the bark of an old oak tree with a sharp stone, detectives found one final haunting message: EH. Just 2 letters carved by what must have been trembling hands. A silent echo of a woman who refused to disappear quietly into the night. Emily Hart's story remains one of the most chilling, unresolved cases in recent history. It's a terrifying story of obsession, of fear, and of a predator who was lurking in plain sight all along. It's a case where the truth remains buried under years of snow and silence. And it's a case that still haunts the small town of Willow Creek, for one simple, terrifying reason. The man who took her was never caught, and he may still be out there, watching someone else, right now. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as compelling as we did, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into these powerful cases. Your support helps us continue to bring these important stories to light. Stay safe out there,